Here we are. Here's the aims of this webinar. The whole idea is to kind of have an informal meeting of presenters at going to be at the Vienna Congress. And I just want to flag up that the aim of this webinar has completely evolved since we had the original idea, and I offered to put it on for Mike, because at that stage, which was about a year ago, it was actually supposed to be to promote the Congress, but now it's so overwhelmed with participants that that role is no longer required because there's so many people booked on. It's been such a successful thing. So we thought we'd change the emphasis and just have it as a kind of informal get together and kind of meet each other. And I'll just explain how we're going to do that in a minute. So I thought we'd just start off with an introduction to the webinar system. We'll find out a few things about you, the audience, and who's out there. We've got 100 people registered for the webinar, so we'll have to see, find out a little bit about you in a minute. And then we thought we'd have some just mini 5-minute presentations from each of the presenters in turn, and then open it up for discussion. And I'll just explain in a minute how you can do that, how you can discuss and question with us, and then a little ending at the end. Okay, so let's find out something about you then. First of all, are you going to the Congress in Vienna? So let's find out whether you're already booked up, or whether you can't go, or you hope to go but you haven't booked, or you're not sure. So let's just see. Oh, okay. Very good. The results are coming in. Thank you very much for voting. We've got 87%. Yes, look at this. Almost everyone on this webinar is booked up or ready to go. So we'll see you in Vienna. That's absolutely cool. And 15% of you just can't quite make it, but never mind. Okay. And 3% are not sure. Well, let's just see what happens. I don't know if we'll have to see whether there's any places yet. We'll have to get in touch with Mike about that. Okay, so assuming you're going to the Congress, which most of you are, let's find out what you're attending as. I just want to see how many other presenters are actually in the audience, as it were. Let's just see. Okay. Yeah, so are you going to be a presenter, a teacher, who you're in the audience at the moment? Participant, organizers. Okay, cool. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, okay, great. So let's just have a look. Yeah, it looks like there's probably 1 or 2 presenters still, presenters in the audience. And if you want to get in touch with us with the chat box and you want to talk to us with audio or type in some questions, that would be really cool. Most of you are people who have booked on the Congress as a participant or an organizer. So that's great. So we know quite a bit about you now. I'm just going to go to the next slide and see. Right, okay, so now it's time for presentation. So I'm going to ask Zahara if she can to make Bill Palmer the presenter, and it's over to you. Over to you, Bill, when you're ready.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, Diego, hey, great to see you.
I'm all set up. I miscalculated the time. Sorry about
you
that.
did. You made it just.
You made a big time difference.
What time is it?
I made it yesterday, but missed it today.
What time?
It's about 3:30 in the afternoon.
3:30 in the afternoon, right? Okay. What time is it in Canada, Lisa?
It's 2:30 here. 2:30. Well, 2:40 now.
And in Rome, you're 1 hour ahead, I think, Gabriella, aren't you?
Yeah, it's 8:40.
One thing, this subject is quite really important for me, because when I started doing shiatsu, which was countless ages ago, there was no profession at all. It wasn't a job. It wasn't a, and most people did it as evening classes or just to help develop themselves in some way. And then as it became a profession, as training courses started up, it started to go in a direction that I was a bit worried about, because people started using a more medical language and an idea of curing and diagnosing and curing conditions. And although that was part of the Japanese language about shiatsu, I felt that it would get into competition with the medical profession here and be difficult to present it as the wonderful therapy it is. And what I wanted to say was that I think that word therapy has two different meanings. And if you think about physical therapies, it's usually used in the medical sense of there being some condition, and the physical therapy focuses on curing conditions or relieving symptoms, while the way it's used in the term of psychotherapy focuses on developing self-awareness and giving a person tools for dealing with life. So the trouble with using the medical paradigm, the physical therapy word of the use therapy, is that it's difficult to test. You can't do very easily, can't do controlled trials, and it's difficult to explain any mechanism for shiatsu. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but the way that I've chosen to go is to really take on the paradigm of psychotherapy without doing psychotherapy. So I see shiatsu, the way in which I like to do shiatsu, and I call it movement shiatsu. It doesn't use any medical language, and it doesn't use any mysterious language like ki or meridians. And because basically a client doesn't understand what ki is, whether we do or not, I don't know, but doesn't understand meridians, doesn't understand the concept of Kyojitsu diagnosis. All of those things are mysterious. So it puts a barrier up between the practitioner and the client, or the client becomes more passive. But within the psychotherapeutic paradigm, the client has to be active and to understand what's happening. So basically, I've been developing bodywork and in a way that develops self-awareness through touch and through movement, and it aims to give clients tools for self-development through these, giving them experiments to do. So, for instance, if they have a pattern of movement which is causing some muscular conflict, that you can help the client to move in different ways and to experiment with moving, to explore themselves rather than to rely on the practitioner for doing something to them. And this in particular, I've just found to be, well, one thing that's very useful for clients with chronic conditions and for people with disabilities. But I think most importantly, it's easier to convince skeptics that it's a useful therapy. We're not trying to prove some curative powers. We're saying actually by doing this, you can be more aware of your patterns, aware of the way in which your mind and your body relate to each other. And I would like to see more reaching out to skeptics by changing the language we use and changing the dynamics of the therapeutic relationship so that it stops being a branch of alternative medicine and starts being a type of complementary therapy. So I hope I've covered what was in my presentation, but that's basically it. And it's really a proposal for how we present ourselves rather than changing what we do. Okay.
Right. Okay. Great.
I'll finish there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's great. I think probably Lisa will probably be interested in commenting a bit later on the whole research side, because that's your thing, isn't it, Lisa? Just going to unmute. Yeah.
A lot of what Bill said.
Yeah, sorry, we
Can
just
you hear
unmuted.
me?
We just unmuted you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, research is one of my passions, but I agree with a lot of what Bill said. I think the idea of changing the language we use so that it's demystified and understandable, not just by our patients, but by the wider healthcare community is essential. And I love your idea of ensuring that the patient is an active participant, right? And by using those terms that they don't fully understand, you're right, we're making, in doing so, we're making them more of a passive recipient rather than an active participant in their treatment as they should be. Yeah, so some great points.
Okay, great. Here we go. So shall we go on to Gabriella then? Let's we're going to make her presenter. Yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Let's see if it works for you. Oh yes, we have got your desktop. That's a good start.
Okay.
Yes.
I tell you what,
Can you see my screen?
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yeah, we just need to see your Adobe presentation now.
Do you have myself on the webcam or?
Yes, we can see you and we can see your whole screen.
Okay, perfect. So I can start.
Well, we need to see your slides though, Gabriella. We can see your whole screen at the moment, your whole desktop.
But I put the slide on and it's not there. So okay, I go with the webinar presentation. Let's see if it's better like this. Okay. This is the last one I should go. Can you see it now?
No, we can see your whole desktop. So
I don't know what's going on with the presentations.
Can you click on your Adobe button at the bottom there?
I already this I take away and I go with my Adobe, which has disappeared now. Okay, let me get it back. You will see a lot of my stuff, never mind. Can you see it now? No.
No, just a thing. I'll just maybe stop sharing the screen and we'll just do it with talking like Bill did, maybe.
Okay,
is
the screen away now?
No, it's still there. What we'll do is, okay, we're just going to make me back to the presenter and then that means you'll just have, that's it. That's cool. Yes, just to talk. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Seems the thing tonight. Language seems to be the first issue. Okay. So I'm on?
Yes, you are. Yes. Yep, we can see you.
Okay. So hi to everybody, and I'm Gabriella Polli. I'm from Rome, and I'm very pleased to be here and to share with you some of my ideas, experiences, opinions, to share with you my shiatsu. And thanks, Cliff, for organizing this webinar, which was an advertising idea, but I think this idea of sharing is even better. So regarding shiatsu as a therapy of the future, for me, yes, I see it very well in this evolution and in this new aspect. And in my experience, shiatsu has really proved to be effective as a therapy for most of my clients, of my receivers, no matter in which conditions they were. And also, shiatsu has proved effective in the wider sense of the word for very sick people or also for terminal patients. I think the therapeutic effect of shiatsu comes from a very different approach from the Western medicine. And this, for me, it's a very important point that we as practitioners should emphasize and stress more and more. There is no competition between Western medicine and shiatsu. They have two different approaches, but shiatsu is not an alternative to Western medicine, but it can be a complementary tool in its unique way to be therapeutic. And again, in my opinion, what the effect of shiatsu does not come from working or curing a disease, like in Western medicine, but in working with and stimulating the potentials, the strengths, the healing power of the human being. Because we all know the shiatsu doesn't have a symptomatic approach, but we all work with symptoms. So in my practice, in my experience, when I work with the client, I don't focus on the disease, I don't focus on the sick part of his body, I don't work with that, but I try really to work with the whole person and to harmonize and integrate all his parts and to stimulate again his potentials and his healing powers. So I work with healthy energy, not with the unhealthy energy of the disease. So I work and with the strengths of the person and not with the weak energy. And this healthy energy is the one that can create the most changes in the system of the person. So this is anyway my approach, and I must say that I've had good results out of this. So what I see, what is my vision for the future is shiatsu, Western medicine working together, no competition, but acknowledging the peculiarities of each one and in mutual respect and in mutual support. And this for me would mean shiatsu for children, shiatsu for adults, shiatsu for old people, shiatsu in hospital, in hospices, in old people home, shiatsu for cancer patients, neurological patients, immune disease patients, just together with Western medicine, working together, respect, support, acknowledgement. I think this, Diego, you know, this is already happening. I'm also having my own experience in Children's Hospital, but according to me, not to the extent it could happen. So I think we really have to commit ourselves so that these effects, these therapeutic effects of shiatsu are known to the public and to the institutions. And some of the issues I see to be discussed are, again, how to explain the effectiveness of shiatsu, how it works, why it works to the public, to the clients, to the institutions, what language, again, Bill, what language we should use, what kind of terminology, how we can make really ourselves understood what it is and how it works, and also how we can use the recent findings of research to explain again how and why shiatsu works. And I think the recent findings are really supporting and explaining what we are doing and why what happens. And also again, how we can present shiatsu as a complementary approach and not as an alternative approach. So again, no competition. And also to see what kind of roles our shiatsu societies, shiatsu federation can have in this evolution of shiatsu. And I think really the European Shiatsu Congress will be a valuable tool to exchange idea, to exchange experience, so we can really build together this future of shiatsu as a therapy. So thanks to everybody involved in organizing it.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. That's great. That's very interesting. Great. Okay, so let's move on to Diego. He's our next presenter. Let's just see how that goes. Diego, we're going to make you the presenter, and we're going to try and share your screen. Hooray!
Yeah,
You got it.
oh, can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Hooray! Okay, third time lucky.
Okay, now let me. Okay.
It's a long way from Uruguay for those signals to get to us. Okay, great.
So just a moment. I also wanted to check that I'm sharing the main screen and
yeah, we had your pictures up just a second ago. We can see.
yeah, I got it. Okay, I'll just keep it there.
Okay.
There we go.
We have your
We had your
desktop.
pictures last time. Yeah, there we go. We've got them back now. Yeah.
There we go.
Pictures, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
good.
Yeah. Okay. Off you go.
So great to be here and sharing with so many people, so many different places. It's a great idea, Cliff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's great news that we don't have to promote the Congress anymore, because it seems to be the most successful Congress that's ever been organized.
Incredible. I think there's 500 people booked on. That's what Mike said last time I talked to him.
Great.
Incredible.
So as Gabriela was saying, it's fantastic that we will get all this exchange of ideas. I love what Bill said. I love what Gabriela said. Particularly what Bill was saying about language. I think it's very important that we come up with a new way of explaining what we do. I don't think that the meridian or key or energy is something that we completely have to phase out, because it's a kind of language that describes that something that a lot of people don't get to describe in any other way. So although it's poetic and metaphoric, I think it's very useful to have those images of the energy flowing or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Nick, I'm sure Nick will be able to add something to that later on, Nick, because that's Nick's area of metaphor. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Absolutely, and yeah, one of my favorite quotes from his book is about metaphor, but I'll let you go into that, Nick. At the same time, I think it is very important to be plain in our language of explaining what shiatsu is and what it can do. But on the other hand, although most of you know that I had a pretty successful in terms of access to patients in a high technology department, the open heart surgery department of Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, doing shiatsu on open heart surgery patients. At the same time that we have access to that, we have to be aware that, you know, we don't have to make it something else than what we do. The fantastic thing about the experience that I had was that nobody in that highly technological, organized, institutional world could check what I was doing. That was amazing. It's like there really are no there's no way that somebody can supervise what you do, because what we do is really off the chart. And I think there is value of keeping what we do with that level of not mystery or mystique. I think we need to explain it very plainly, but at the same time, you know, not going over the board of waiting to get the right kind of research that will explain why what we do works or it doesn't work, or, you know, what's the mechanism. I ventured into research many years ago because I thought that we as a field needed to have that information in medical terms, in medical language, in order to convince them that this worked, so, you know, I would have the confidence to propose it. And then I had the big surprise that, you know, although I tried with New York University, with Columbia Presbyterian, which is the University of Columbia and Cornell, and another university, I tried to come to explain what we do in medical terms, in research terms, in statistical terms, and it doesn't work, or at least didn't work for me. Lisa is doing a great job about research. I can't wait to hear about that because many years have passed. But the big surprise was that, you know, even without that information, even without that knowledge, I was able to get on to work, and I was seeing all these patients in the midst of the operations. I ended up working in the operating room and doing shiatsu. I wasn't doing anything else but shiatsu to the best of my capabilities. So I think it's important to work on a language that integrates what we do, and but at the same time, we must not get hung up on trying to find something that might never arrive, because it's a different world, it's a different realm of reality, basically. What we do is absolutely needed, and is absolutely appropriate, and it is wanted. So that's a little bit my crusade. So in the Congress, my objective is to, my aim is to work a little bit on the evolutionary aspects of shiatsu, you know, how shiatsu changed, at least for me, in order to be able to bring it into institutions like hospitals. You know, that picture that you see in there is a class I'm teaching in Amsterdam. So I was teaching some years ago of shiatsu on the table. This is also, you know, like doing hara diagnosis without palpating, because in certain conditions you would not be able to touch the abdomen. So these are some of the techniques that I developed with the help of Pauline Sasaki. And also what I'll be talking about in the Congress is you know, practical things of how you go from the floor to the table in order to be able to work on the hospital bed, and what had to change about the internal mechanics of you know, the alignment of the hara. Is it still appropriate when you're working on the table? Stuff like that. And but I'm really interested also in the idea of developing a common language that we can bring forward into the 21st century.
That sounds great. Yeah, that seems to be a
almost
theme.
There.
That sounds like a theme that's evolving out of these presentations, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So could we then move on? Thank you very much, Diego. Thank you very much for that. Now we'll move on to Alice. Just we'll make Alice the presenter and see whether we can get her screen up. Yes.
Can you join?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah.
I can't see it. Okay, now I can see it.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Right, great. Okay.
Okay, I've made it so that I can't see you guys, but I can see my screen, which might be more important for me. Woo! Hang on.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
yep, that's it.
Hello, people. I'm speaking to you today from the north of England, where I've come for a few days walking. And I just jotted down a few ideas of really where I'm at the moment. And this is ever evolving. I feel it's very exciting times for me at the moment, but also particularly with shiatsu. And unintentionally, I'm also at the moment chair of the Shiatsu Society in the UK, which is proving a very interesting experience, and has allowed me to, after nearly 20 years working really just with Kishi, has allowed me to see what's going on really, which has been really interesting for me. So I really enjoyed listening to everybody and sparking all sorts of other thoughts. So I'm just going to take you to my first proper screen. This is what I just jotted down to just talk to you a little bit about. I said a bit about me. I'm not going to say much about me, I think, except that my job with Kishi was always to articulate the work. He was very good at showing and feeling the experience, but very many people never really understood the work. So it's always my job with Kishi to listen to him and to reinterpret that, and that remains my job. So, and Seiki really is within the Shiatsu tradition. It's a sort of development through that tradition. And I agree with what people have been saying very much. I think I'd go even further and say it's just not medicine. It works on a completely different model. It's a philosophical position, in fact. And what we mean by that was that it's based on a particular idea of what a person is and what a healthy life looks like from that place. And without that philosophical basis, it's very difficult to know how to talk about what we do. So that's where I start from. Of course, putting that into practice, I think it is entirely possible, but it's a tricky job. And as I said here, it's a wisdom tradition, in fact, and I absolutely agree with Bill that it's about self-development. And the brilliant thing about working with people on a one-to-one therapy basis, whether in fact it's talking or doing shiatsu, seiki, is that it amplifies your own self-development. You're bringing consciousness out to the surface for yourself particularly, but also with your client. So you're helping them to develop their own consciousness. And for me, that the one extra step there that we haven't been so good at is to articulate that development. And we need to articulate it. It's desperately important that we learn to articulate this better. So I'm completely in line with what everyone's been saying here. I think we do need a new language, in fact, or at least drawing from other languages, and particularly from the original philosophical base of shiatsu, which is effectively Buddhist philosophy. And we can talk about what a person is very, very happily from that place. And it's not a secular place to talk from. And I think I'm very happy to say that. I think we've been perhaps a little bit embarrassed sometimes to say this, but I think we can hold our heads high. I certainly happy to. Maybe others disagree with me on that and say that. So I'm just going to move on a few more things. So what is a person from the Buddhist point of view is that a person is not the mind, is not the body, but we deal with the body. And so we're dealing with the subconscious a lot of the time, which makes our job very, very difficult. And I think it is a particularly interesting area now to bring what Nick's been doing, particularly, is to bring language, and what I've been doing from a slightly different point of view, to bring language into that room as well. Although I don't speak much when I work with people, but the ability to do so is absolutely essential. And I've also been thinking of what is good help, and where are we going in this profession? I've put here. And for me at the moment, I'm thinking about how to train, how to have a profession which is fundamentally a wisdom tradition. This has been a problem for thousands of years, or at least 2,000 years, how to bring these things properly together. And I think the time really is now. We are becoming able to do this, and we are in the perfect position to do it because we have this so far mostly silent knowledge, and we need to increase. In fact, for me, we need to prioritize experience, as Masunaga would call that, session work, more than we have been. So in a way, I think we should knock out a lot of the language that we have been using. It's too complicated, not really helping us and not really helping clients. Absolutely agree with Bill there. But we do need some very particular language skills. Naturally, I think I've got a few, and I'm sure clearly other people do, and I've seen some of Nick's work, which is great. So I'm just going to leave it there and leave that hanging, and come back to the group.
Thank you very much, Alice. So that's great. So if we could just make Nick the presenter. Very interesting. There's definitely a theme evolving there, isn't there? Definitely a theme about language, philosophy, and the thing that really struck me was I thought what a great idea. Instead of trying to fit ourselves inside Western medicine, if we take a broad enough view, Western medicine sits as a subset of what we do. So that's a great way of turning the whole thing over into a completely different perspective, isn't it? You know, it's really good. Okay, great. So talking of language and so on, we have Nick Pohl as the...
One of the I'm just trying to remember what I was going to say. One of the things of using this kind of language is that it takes people into surprising places, and it, as I said, it gives people a way to communicate with stuff which has been up to then just a physical thing. So in my book, I go on quite a bit about the verbal mind, which is usually more in the left brain, and the body mind, which, as far as we can see from neuroscience, is more connected to the right side of the brain, and that these two sides of the brain don't really have all that many good ways of communicating with each other until you start to train. If you doing anything which involves both sides of the body, doing anything which involves both sides of the brain, walking, qigong, tai chi, cycling, dancing, singing, poetry, metaphor, all of these wonderful things. And now I've just remembered what I was trying to say originally, which is if we are looking at the medical field, then the field of trauma is an area where what we do is beginning to count. Several leading psychiatrists in the trauma field now really do acknowledge and advocate the use of bodywork therapies, and there's a kind of recognition that you can't really work with trauma without working with the body. That may seem terribly obvious to us as shiatsu practitioners, but for maybe 50 years, the profession of psychiatry has not thought that was obvious at all. So I think there are hopeful signs like that. There are places, niches where we can begin to be recognized. But one of them, of course, is this great wave of popularity now for what is called mindfulness, or Achtsamkeit in German, or what is it, consapevolezza in Italian. It's all over the place. What we're doing is very mindful. It's a form of mindful touch. Maybe that gives us a way in, because mindfulness has been proven clinically by randomized controlled trials. And if mindfulness can be proven by randomized controlled trials, then to be honest, I don't see why shiatsu shouldn't be. It's a question of politics, it's a question of funding, it's a question of our self-belief, and it comes back, as everyone else has been saying, to finding a language with which we can communicate. So that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
really.
great.
Back to everyone else.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Nick. Okay, great.
Thanks.
And so that leads very neatly on then to Lisa. Last but definitely by no means least. Everything's okay, I think. You should be the presenter. Let's just see if the internet gods are with you and whether you can share your screen. Yes, hooray.
Fingers are crossed.
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Yeah, absolutely. Advancing shiatsu therapy. No, advancing shiatsu therapy.
Right. Well, I'm glad you can see it. That's wonderful. I can't.
it'll be under. It'll be a window somewhere.
There we go.
You got it? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I've got part of it.
Yeah. If you move, juggle your windows, you find it. Yeah. Great. Okay. Over to you, Lisa.
Exactly. Great. Thank you. And thank you so much, Cliff, for organizing this discussion. This is really exciting and I think a wonderful intro to the Congress itself.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. So I think as a profession, we're at a bit of a crossroads right now. I think in some cases we've seen decreased enrollment at schools and some going to part-time programs and even closing. I hope that's not the case in Europe as well, but it certainly is here. But at the same time, we've seen this really dynamic growth of the international shiatsu community, and I find that very exciting. And it's created a lot of dialogue about how we can move the profession forward and where we are now and how we can move it forward without losing the essence of what shiatsu is. So there are two areas that I feel very passionate about that I feel can help to advance shiatsu so that it can really become an integral part of the healthcare system. And those two areas are research and integrative medicine or collaborative medicine. So
that's it.
Now I've moved on to my second slide.
Yep,
slide.
we've got
Can
it.
you see that?
Yeah,
Okay,
role of research
great.
in advancing shiatsu. Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So research, as I said, is a passion of mine. I've published some research on shiatsu. I'm collaborating on another study now and doing a Master of Science in Complementary Medicine Research and doing my thesis as well. So it's something I'm really quite interested in. And I think when I talk about research, a couple of people have mentioned randomized controlled trials, the gold standard of research, but there's much more to it than that. There are pilot studies that are great for exploring new areas that people want to investigate. And there are case series and case studies which are completely doable by the average solo practitioner. There are things that we can use to slowly build the evidence base for shiatsu, and they're not terribly difficult to do. So why research? Well, as I'm sure most of you know, there is very little research on shiatsu, published research. And we really need to demonstrate the benefits of it. We all know from our clinical practice that there are multiple benefits for a wide variety of patients. We see it every day, but those benefits haven't been demonstrated through research. And if we want to advance shiatsu and have it take a greater role in the healthcare system, we really need research to back that up. So how can we do that? Nick mentioned a couple of problems with that, one of them being funding. But that aside, I think the other great problem with it is a lack of research literacy. So most practitioners are not really comfortable with the idea of research. And I think as if we're already practicing professionals, we need to develop some basic research literacy skills. I'm not suggesting that everyone should go out and do research. That's ridiculous. Most people aren't interested in it. But we should all be able to read a research study, understand it, evaluate it, and then use that to inform our practice and use it to promote shiatsu with other healthcare professionals, be they medical or complementary, and with patients as well. And we need to be promoting the existing research that there is. So there are some studies out there. We should be making ourselves aware of those and really promoting that, again, not only to our patients, but to the wider healthcare community. That is a great way to raise the profile of shiatsu, raise an understanding of what it is and what it can do. And we can also connect with other practitioners. So if you are interested in doing research, you don't have to know absolutely everything there is to know about research to do a study. You simply need to connect with other practitioners who have similar interests to you and who have existing skills and expertise that complements yours. So that way you can work together and rely on each other and learn from each other. Yeah. So the other area I'd like to touch on is integrative medicine. And this means different things for different people, of course. When I say integrative medicine, I'm referring to a healing-oriented approach that considers the whole being, so body, mind, and spirit, very much like shiatsu. And it involves using all appropriate treatments, biomedical and complementary or natural healthcare, whichever term you prefer. And why do we want to do it? Well, healthcare has been making this gradual move toward more integrative models and collaborative models over the past few years. And there are benefits to the patient because they are able to access all of the treatments that are appropriate for them. And if we're collaborating with other practitioners, the patient starts to see that they have a team of healthcare practitioners rather than 2 or 3 isolated practitioners who are in their silos, not communicating with each other. So there are great benefits to the patient. It also becomes a patient-driven model, so they become an active participant in their care. And there are benefits to practitioners as well. So with these sort of models, integrative and collaborative models, we see a great deal of practitioner satisfaction. And it fosters an understanding of various disciplines, of what each other's role is, and it really encourages respect amongst various disciplines as well. And the other point of this is that if we're collaborating with other practitioners, we're able to make sure that our treatments are supporting and complementing each other to get the best possible health outcome for the patient. So again, rather than us working in isolation, we're all working together toward the same goal. So I'm very fortunate in that I have been working for a hospital in an integrative clinic for the past 7 years, and it's been a wonderful experience collaborating with doctors and nurses and physiotherapists, psychotherapists, massage therapists, naturopathic doctors. I could go on and on. We're a very comprehensive team, but it's been a wonderful experience collaborating and seeing how well this model works. And I recognize that most of us are not in that position, but even if we're in sole practice, there are ways of increasing opportunities for collaboration and for integration. So again, if you're a sole practitioner, I'd suggest that you connect with other practitioners who have similar interests to you. So if you see a lot of patients with migraine, for example, try to connect with some neurologists in your area, some other complementary therapists as well that specialize in that population, and provide them with some basic information about shiatsu and what it can do, and of course, your experience and expertise and what you've seen clinically working with your patients. And the other thing that we can do is open dialogue and share information with other practitioners. So with your patient's permission, of course, you can share information with their other healthcare providers, or you can take a more direct route and simply provide some info to your patients for them to pass on to their other practitioners. So you could provide a simple summary of the work you've been doing together, the results you've been seeing. Maybe you've seen a decreased occurrence of migraine and decreased use of medication. So provide that information along with your contact info. They can pass it on to their neurologist or their other healthcare providers. And it really opens the door for communication. And it also allows those medical practitioners to see that what we're doing does have value. Their patients are seeking out these treatments and they're getting results from them. And that over time may lead to more referrals in your direction. It may lead to more collaboration and further opportunities. So I'll be discussing both of these concepts a little bit more in Vienna, and very much looking forward to that. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions or to hear any dialogue on this too.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That's great. Yeah, I think maybe not everyone is aware in Europe that. Can you make me the panelist again? Probably not everyone in Europe is aware that in Canada, there's been a tradition of full-time courses, haven't there? I think it was the standard training is 2 years full-time, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see, in Europe, it's always generally been a part-time, usually a 3-year, 4-year part-time program. So
right.
Slightly
we
different
have those as well.
there.
We do have part-time.
Yeah.
We do have part-time programs here as well.
Yeah.
And they seem to have been more popular in recent years.
Yeah. And it's definitely true that shiatsu intake in schools has reduced, especially since the financial crisis, at least in our experience anyway. But we're finding actually in the Shiatsu College, where I work in the UK, that the numbers have just started to pick up over the last year. So last year, 1 or 2 years. So it seems to be coming back up to the stabilizing level of intakes that happened after the big boom we had in the UK. There was a boom that peaked around the year 2000, according to the graphs that I made of the number of graduates we had in our school, and then it kind of went down and stabilized out in a sort of flat line, you know, sort of more, which I think is more like a kind of sustainable level. And that dipped down again after the financial crisis around 2010, but now it seems to be creeping back up to some kind of sustainable level. So yeah, so we there's definitely, and I think Alice probably would agree with me that there is definitely a new energy in the shiatsu world in the UK, isn't there, Alice? There's definitely,
very much so.
Yeah, it's definitely on the up. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, great. Well, I have got a small presentation. You can't see me because there's 6 webcams is the maximum that we're allowed. So you can see my screen, can't you? Yeah.
No.
Okay, so yeah, good. So we're here. Let's just see if I can go on to the next slide. Presentations, we've had those. Yep. Okay, so I'd just like to talk literally for 5 minutes just about my background, and also I'd just like to give some feedback from the wonderful presentations that we've had that have been so interconnected, really. My background is I was apprenticed and taught mainly by Pauline Sasaki, and she was influenced by Kishi, that Alice has done a lot of work with, and Masunaga, that work is very well known in Europe and America. Pauline Sasaki's work I've broken down into 3 different periods, and I worked with her for 20 years between 1987 and 20 years of 2007. So I was with her during this early middle of the early period, and then into this middle period, and we worked together for 20 years. And what we were doing for a lot of that time, we were teaching maybe 3 big workshops, sometimes in America, sometimes in Europe, sometimes in the UK, about 3 or 4 a year. And we're trying to figure out how to integrate some of Kishi's ideas with Masunaga's system to try and come up with a fully integrated system. And that integrated system, I think, has a lot of connections with what several people have said. Alice has said about philosophy, connects with, you know, almost everything I think that everyone has said from a particular angle. So let's just go on to the next slide. Yeah, and so that brings me to just my last slide. I just want to talk a minute about my feeling about shiatsu as a therapy. And for me, I really believe that actually, as Alice, I think, said, we have to have the courage of our own modality, because I actually think that we're on a wave of a new paradigm shift that's very much connected with the whole integrative medicine that Lisa mentioned, which is that the Western medicine paradigm has some limitations to it, which are becoming more and more evident, and that's why so many more people are turning towards shiatsu as a modality, and to other things as well, like yoga, qigong, and other modalities. And I just want to tell you a story about that, which is that here in Norwich, we've actually got a medical doctor in our classes. She's in the first year, and she's a practicing medical doctor. And I had a very interesting conversation with her. I said, why do you want to study shiatsu? And she said, well, Western medicine is only a few hundred years old, but it's almost over. Her feeling as a GP was that the medical pharmaceutical based model was reaching its end, and you can see that with some of the drug resistances that are coming up, the fact that there's a low level of satisfaction amongst patients, and so her idea was that actually shiatsu sits within a philosophy that inevitably is going to become more and more popular as the limits to the narrow definition of Western medicine starts to come to an end. And I think we should have the courage to take our place in that. And another conversation I had with her only on Saturday was she was working on me, and I was trying to teach her how to palpate the hara, which was really difficult for her because she's used to palpating the hara, palpating the abdomen medically, to find lumps and things like that. I worked with her with 2 or 3 tutorials, and this time she had almost got it. 95% of the technique, she had her alignment, she was relaxed, she wasn't trying to feel for the material body, and it was just that little tweak in the technique that would allow her. And she said, it's so frustrating, I can't not feel the physical body. And just with a few exercises that we did together, suddenly a window opened and she could feel the energy, whatever you want to call it, the key in the hara. And that was really a very rewarding moment there. And talking to her and experiencing her frustrations in the model that she's working in just gave me a lot of confidence that I think we should all have, really, in that with shiatsu we have got a complete system that has specific techniques for contacting the physical, emotional, mental, and the spiritual levels. So inevitably we are going to be outside of a materialistic material-based medical model, and we've all got our own paths to tread and to make through that. But that seems to me to be a fundamental thing, and that's has been echoed in many of the presentations that we've heard already. Okay, so that's my little 5 minutes. And now we've got, believe it or not, we've only got 25 minutes left for questions. So now we're going to open up the have we got anything coming in, Zahara? I'll just go back to the...
Yeah, we had a SPY participant, Mike
Mike
Mandel.
Mike Mandel, yes, he's the guy who's responsible for the Congress.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Right, okay, Mike's been, yes, great. Shall I read it out? I wonder if Mike wants to say anything. Has he got? I wonder if he's got his mic. Should we unmute him and just see? Yeah, Mike, are you there? He may not have audio. No, okay. Okay, well, I'll read it out, okay? Mike's been watching us all, so watch out, everyone. The boss is watching. And he says he's deeply inspired. He gives the work we do right now in Vienna a big boost in motivation. So thanks a lot for getting the webinar together. And thanks to Lisa, Gabriella, Alice, Diego, Nick, and Bill for sharing your ideas and your time. He wants to throw in 2 questions. Okay, here we are. Listen up. Okay. Why should we always try to avoid shiatsu language? Why should we avoid to talk about ki and about meridians? And why should we avoid the magic of energy? Shouldn't the existence of energy be something normal for us in the 21st century? Shouldn't we invite other professions in the energy world? Because on a subconscious level, isn't that exactly what people are looking for if they choose a method like shiatsu? My experience of more than 20 years of intensive work with shiatsu in hospitals, about 15 to 20 clients a week, if you have success with what you do, people are getting interested in it, and even the doctors get curious about the idea of ki. In my opinion, ki is one aspect of our life we really lost in our modern society, and methods like shiatsu could and should bring it back. So what's your opinion? Okay, who would like to talk first? Would you like to put your hand up, because we have muted some of the presenters out just to keep the background noise down. Okay, let's hear from Bill. Here we go. Okay, so here we go, Bill. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yes, I mean, when I was giving my presentation, I think I might have said that I didn't want to use words like ki or meridians, and I still stick by that. But I don't think that's necessarily true for other people. Mm-hmm. And listening to everyone, it's been really interesting, because what I see is that I think there's 2 sides to the shiatsu world. And one side is basically working with patients who come with a problem, and there's some specific technique they have for working out what to do in shiatsu, and you can call it a hara diagnosis or whatever. And they have a language, an internal language in which to understand their perceptions, which then tells them what to do. And I think that's a perfectly valid model. But it's a medical model, although it's working with ki, and although it's working with different concepts to Western medicine. It's a model where the practitioner is the expert, and the patient is fairly passive in the process. And the patient doesn't really understand what's going on, but the practitioner does what they do in a very expert way and is probably very effective. So I think that's a very valid way we can say, okay, our language, our way of working, the concepts we're using is effective, and by speaking in that language and owning that language, we can gain respect for that language. But my viewpoint is really different, and I just wanted to say something I didn't say in the presentation, is that I worked for about 15 years focusing on working with children with disabilities. And one thing I found was that they were all, a lot of them were quite traumatized in a funny way by the therapy, by the medical procedures they were having to go through, because they were disabled, but somehow the process of trying to make them more normal made them feel that there was something wrong with them in their soul. There was something wrong with them as a person, because they were being treated as there being something wrong with them. And so I started to work basically by looking at what they could do rather than what their problems were, and helping them to move in ways in which they could move. And then they had a spirit. They felt, actually, I'm all right, basically. And then they had the spirit to explore and go into more difficult areas. And I think that's something that applies to adults too. But it's not so much a medical thing where I've got a bad back, I want someone to do something to make it better. But that basically, how can I explore and extend my potential? And I think you have to work in a very, very different way there. I think Nick's in a way similar, but it's what has been my passion has been to try and not use language that is not normal language, to try and help people to work through their own sensations and to become explorers. And then at some point, they understand how their mind and their body and their spirit relate, how the patterns in their body are related to their emotional patterns, how the emotional patterns are related to their life issues. And that is them understanding key without any concepts of which type of key it is or not. They're understanding the relationship between the different levels of themselves. So I think that it depends on what you're doing. If you're an expert treating passive patients, please do use the language. I'm not saying that's wrong at all. But if you're trying to help people to explore themselves, then I find it helpful to not use that language and let people discover their own concept network.
Yeah, great.
So yeah.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you, Bill. So is there anyone else who'd like to? Alice, yeah, do you want to just pitch in with that?
Yeah, I'd just say that for me, I agree with Bill. Use the language if it works for you, but I find a lot of people it doesn't work for, and the language also obscures. I don't really know what people mean a lot of the time by key and this language. A lot of the shiatsu theory was sort of an awkward fit always with the actual practice, and I think we could do better and do more accurately as well. And I think it can be used actually to take you away from the real experience, and I think that it does that for a lot of students. It's very disempowering. So I think it's time that we actually found a more accurate language that works for us.
Okay, anyone else want to? Yeah, Gabriella, shall we? The thing that struck me, yeah, Gabriella, yeah. Can I just say something? Yeah, because I was just thinking of you, Gabriella, because I remember in your presentation you were saying that you work with the healthy aspect of the person, and that just in a way that resonates for me with what Bill was saying, because my understanding of Masunaga's work, particularly the way Pauline interpreted, was exactly that it's not a pathological model, that actually even something as basic as the Kyojitsu reaction, which is fundamental, is actually an experience of a healthy movement of qi. It's not a pathologically based model. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what Bill was saying, I totally agree. I work with the potential, and I see the person as beautiful and perfect as he or she is. And through my work, what I try to do is to remind this person that she or he has everything, just forgot something, something went under the carpet, but I try really to make them aware of who they are if they forgot that. And I think for me this is essential. So not to work on the unhealthy or pathogenic energy, as Pauline used to call it, but to work with the energy that can create the most change, and that's the healthy energy, that's the potential. And going back to Mike's remarks, I think I agree with everybody that we cannot talk a language that is not understandable to other people, but also we should not lose the uniqueness of shiatsu, and we should kind of be proud of what it is and what it can do. So I really wish we have to find something like a compromise, that in order to be understood, we don't lose the essence or the philosophy or the uniqueness of the shiatsu approach, so that we don't make it smaller in a way, or we use medical terms, or we don't use anything. And I think our main task is really to make people conscious, and they are not passive. I mean, in a way, if we work with their potentials, we help them to become active in their life.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I mean, I think there are, thank you very much, because I think I would agree with that. I mean, I think, okay, we might, as shiatsu practitioners, we may be treating specific things, and we may have an idea of what we're doing. And this, I'll just read out Mike's second question in a minute, but I think a lot of it is the quality of the touch. I mean, the quality of the touch really, from my understanding, creates a space for the positive aspects of the person's energy to express themselves, however you want to say that. So I think I'm probably closer to Bill, than it might seem at first look, you know what I mean? Because I think it's just I think the internal attitude is actually very similar. Okay, the time is speeding past. My goodness me, it's nearly 10 to. So we've got time. I think we'll just read out Mike's second question, which I think is another interesting one. And maybe we could hear from Nick and Diego and Lisa this time. Okay, so look, if you know you can treat even very severe conditions with just your hands with shiatsu, why should we avoid working with symptoms? And if you can treat severe conditions with your hands without pills, without operations, wouldn't that be a real alternative to the classical medicine then, is what he says. So would Diego or Nick or Lisa like to say anything? Yeah, Diego. Yeah.
I do like, and I sort of made a specialty or a name for myself here in Uruguay as well. I work with a lot of people with cancer, for example, and heart disease, or really life or death situations sometimes. And it's but somehow I don't treat that stuff. Somehow is people that come to my office, they do understand that it's not a miracle. I'm not a doctor. I'm not doing the same thing that the doctor is doing. I'm going to work with their doctor, and what I'm working on is what Gabriela was saying and you were saying, that anti-pathogenic energy. This is what's right with you. It's difficult to become a specialist in that, because like we all have it, and it's about where you put your focus on. And anybody with any symptom, with any disease, will get a lot of benefit just from lifting up what's already okay, instead of focusing on what's not right. And as language goes, and as you know, I'm hooking, I'm putting it together with the first question. You know, like, I think we give another narrative to disease. We give another narrative to the symptoms. The symptoms are metaphors, and that's how I work with them. That's, I think, how we work with them. You know, there's no need to say yin or yang or qi or whatever might sound esoteric. You can use the same words that the client brings to you, or that the doctor has given them, and put it into a different story. You know, like as Lisa was saying, Alice was saying, you know, put that medical thing inside a bigger box where, okay, that has another perspective, another explanation, another way of looking at it that will not disempower you, but on the contrary, will give you extra resources to deal with the symptom.
Yeah, great. That's great. Yeah. And what do you think, Nick? What do you think about that?
I'm thinking, aren't there any other participants who want to have questions? I haven't really got much to say on that one. I think Diego said it all there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay, Lisa, have you got anything else to add to what Diego said?
Well, a little bit, not much.
Yeah.
I really like what you said, Diego, about letting the patient bring their own terms and tell their story. I think that's something that we should all be striving for in practice, to allow them to tell their story in their words, and then build on that and work with what they've brought us. So yes, rather than using the medical terms or using the shiatsu terms, allowing them to have their input and be an active, have an active dialogue from their perspective about it. That's very valuable.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people with serious medical conditions through my volunteer work. I've worked with lots of children over the past 16 years with rare forms of cancer and, heart conditions and double lung transplants and so on. And again, in doing so, like Diego said, I'm not really treating the condition. I'm helping them to feel the best they can with what they're experiencing. So sometimes it will be focused on symptoms. Sometimes it will be focused simply on improving their energy and just increasing their sense of well-being and allowing them to feel a little bit more normal, right?
Yeah.
And again, I let the patient guide that. If they want to address a specific condition, that's fine. But if there's a specific symptom, sometimes I do work from a symptom base alone, and helping people to manage their overriding symptom can help them to regain some control over their overall condition and their overall health.
Yeah. Okay. Diego, do you want to just chip in again?
Just want to add one thing, that this doesn't mean that we're like toning down what we do. It really is effective. I mean, this thing of working with what's right with the person really takes care of the symptom, really gets some miracle result sometimes. And it's not something that we are out there to guarantee, but it's a personal growth that makes it. It's through personal growth. It's through learning about yourself and putting that disease or symptom in that context.
Yeah,
it does work. It's
absolutely,
important to say
yeah.
that it does work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'd like to actually stand up for shiatsu terminology. I'm going to stand up for it because, and for I think good reason. And I tell you some of the reasons why I think it is good. And first of all, it's thousands of years old. It's stood the test of time. It's been used for far longer than Western medicine terminology, and I believe that it's going to extend past it, according to my doctor student. It's a model that, okay, I agree with Bill, it can be used to disempower the client, but it can be, conversely, it can be used to totally empower the client. And as Qigong becomes more and more popular, yoga becomes more and more popular, we're actually, the clients are way ahead of us. I mean, they are just going there, and they're talking about Qi. My clients are coming in, they go, oh, I went to Qigong camp, and oh, I've got this, and what meridians were we working on because I can use this Qigong exercise. You know what I mean? I mean, it can be really, really empowering. And I think it's important also from a philosophical point of view to remember that, you know, Chinese medicine is part of a world medicine. I mean, when I was talking to my student, the doctor, at the weekend, we were talking about the fact that every single culture in the world historically has seen the human being primarily as a spiritual being. You know, the Western medical model, for all its amazing power, and I wouldn't want to put that down, it has incredible power. It has that power through because of the process of the Enlightenment. It's gained that power by creating an illusion that the person is a mechanism, and that's can be extremely damaging to the person's spirit. And I really believe that that's one of the reasons why people come to shiatsu. Okay, we can work with symptoms, but fundamentally what we're doing is we're working with a system that affirms that they are an embodiment of pure spirit. And that's where it comes from, right through the theoretical base. And the shiatsu and TCM terminology allows us to do that. It allows us to say, hey, look, you know, the liver is related to the hun, it's related to your spiritual path through life. And that can talk to people in a completely different way than it can from purely a mechanistic and a completely mechanistic model. I'm not saying it's for everyone, and I have many clients that I never mention meridians and Qi, but I treat it as a valuable resource, and I think it's a great human worldwide resource that we can use to really to evolve as a whole planet. I really do think it's at that level now, and we're part of that. So I'd just like to bring this webinar to a close. We've got 3 minutes, which should be just about enough time for me to skip through to the end of the webinar slide. So I'll just show my screen. Yeah, there we are. Okay, and I just want to just say thank you very much for Mike for allowing us to run this webinar. I'm really sorry for the technical glitches, but I'm really grateful to all the presenters for going with it and doing what we could with the technology. It is a pretty ambitious thing to do, to get 6 people from all around the world, and everyone's still there and they're all talking, so that's really, really great. In New Energy Work, we've been delivering shiatsu CPD online since 2001. That was before Facebook and everything. We did the first online, it was like an online text-based seminar. That was before video, before photos. It was all text at that time. And we did a world first thing with Pauline Sasaki. We still got the transcript on our website. When the webinar finishes, you'll have an opportunity to just give us feedback about the webinar, if you wouldn't mind doing that. And I guess most of you, we're going to see you at the Congress in Vienna. In fact, I'm really looking forward. It's really fired me up, and I just want to say thank you for giving your time to all the presenters. Yeah, see you in Vienna. Really looking forward to it.